YouTubers are dominating the box office. Curry Barker's Obsession is the highest grossing live-action original English film of the 2020s. Kane Parsons' Backrooms made him the youngest filmmaker to ever reach #1 at the box office, and Markiplier's Iron Lung is one of the most widely distributed independent films ever made. But they all have one thing in common: horror. This relationship between YouTube and horror films has been going on for way longer than 2026. Raka Raka raked in awards with their films Talk to Me and Bring It Back with A24. Chris Stuckman paired with Neon to direct Shelby Oaks, and David F. Sandberg, the director of Annabelle Creation and Until Dawn, started his filmmaking career with Lights Out. So the question is, why do YouTubers keep making horror films? There are 5 key elements that explain everything, and putting them all together tells you exactly why this trend is going to continue for a very long time. Don't get me wrong, horror films can make a lot of money, and that's a big reason why so many of them come out every year, but that's not the reason. You see, horror's big pull that has existed for decades is the budget. It is the one genre that studios can throw relatively little money at and make a ridiculous amount of cash in return. Most horror films take place in a small number of locations. Some of them, including Iron Lung, don't even leave one set. When it came to Markiplier's debut, he financed the entire movie himself, and his money went 10 times further than it would in any other genre. He kept the amount of actors low, cast himself, and spent all the money on production itself. Curry Barker's Obsession was the breakout hit of the year, and it only cost them around $1 million to make. Some estimates are even as low as $750,000. By the time Focus Features bought it at a festival, the production company had already made 15 times their budget and the film wasn't even out yet. Of course, it went on to make $500 million in what became one of the most record-breaking films of all time. A good example of why these happen is Bring Her Back. This film had a budget of $15 million, which is actually quite small in Hollywood, and yet it made $39 million. For other genres, this would be considered a disaster, but for an original horror film with a low budget, it's a huge success. This low-risk approach is exactly why we are seeing YouTubers making horror films, because studios are willing to hand a couple of million as an experiment, and if it fails, it will probably still make a profit anyway. On the other hand, if it works, like really works, well, you get Obsession. This element explains how YouTubers aren't all making horror films. It's why the YouTubers that are making movies in the first place seem to just be making horror. That is by far your highest chance of getting a studio deal or making a high quality piece with your own cash. So you've got the movie approved, now how does it become a success? And that brings us to element number 2. If you take a look at the biggest films directed by YouTubers, all of them will tell you a very similar story. With tight budgets comes less room for star power, especially when it comes to horror films that are directed by regular filmmakers. This means that studios can use the YouTubers themselves as the star power by simply hiring them as directors. Of course, this also works for independent films like in Iron Lung, where Markiplier ended up playing the central character himself and used his network to get cameos from his friends and other popular creators. In Talk to Me, Raka Raka used relatively obscure actors that allowed their story to shine without being drowned out by the star power that would come with a celebrity actor. Obsession is of course the best example of this, as Indy Navarrette's portrayal of Nikki was the breakout performance of the 2020s, and 70% of this was in part to the whole point of horror films. There has been a huge relationship between horror and acting range since the genre was invented. Some of the most recognizable performances of all time were given to us by Jack Nicholson, Toni Collette, Anthony Hopkins, Natalie Portman. The list goes on, and these roles were all embedded in the strengths of horror. While big names are usually drawn towards blockbusters, the low budget of horror allows casting directors to go strictly on performance over star power, especially when so much of horror relies on the success of an actor to make the audience truly feel horrified. Micro-expressions, subtlety, and the range that actors can give is pretty much multiplied when you haven't seen the actor before. It lets you sink into the character and the world that much more. All of the big YouTuber-directed horror films have resulted in some pretty phenomenal acting work. Talk to Me introduced Sophie Wilde to the mainstream. Obsession showcased Indy Navarrete. Even Weapons, which is technically directed by an ex-YouTuber, won an Oscar for Amy Madigan's performance, something almost never seen in the horror genre. And when your box office pull doesn't rely on big-name actors to bring people to the theatre, it means your film begins to speak for itself. People are drawn to the premise, to your world, and the story that you want to tell. People want to see the YouTuber's debut, and that's it. It's a lot more satisfying for YouTubers to create their first project when it's so easily able to stand for itself and allow the director to take full credit for the work. With just a single set, Iron Lung is contained within the story of one man in a submarine. That man is Markiplier himself, and arguably Iron Lung's success was carried entirely on the back of the effort he put into the movie alongside the production crew and his wife Amy. They were able to fund the entire project themselves and do all of the film's distribution without the need of any other studio or company. Using just the raw power of Markiplier's worldwide audience, they started a movement to show the film in as many countries and theatres as possible. It's something that has basically never been seen in the film industry before. This is the power of a star director. My next video will be talking about this power that has been increasingly growing throughout the industry for the past few years, where the creative powerhouses behind the films are the ones selling tickets rather than the actors. When you look at Obsession, Iron Lung, Talk to Me, and Backrooms, they were almost all pushed to become box office successes because of word of mouth. And when studios take on projects by YouTubers, they've already guaranteed that the world will be talking about it. So the budget is in your favour and the star power resides in you, but it's still something you could get in other genres. What does horror offer these YouTubers that makes it so common right now? It's time for the third key element, practical effects. Okay, so the two biggest examples of the year, Obsession and Backrooms, made pretty bold use of CGI and visual effects to achieve their goals. That's undeniable, but in reality, most of the work that is talked about from these movies is their practical effects. Kane Parsons, the director of Backrooms, was most excited about actually bringing his YouTube videos from Blender to the real world. He even claimed it was one of the key reasons why he decided to make a movie in the first place, so he could bring the work from his bedroom to life and actually walk around in the world he helped create. As for Obsession, anyone who has seen the film will tell you that almost all of the horror comes from how subtle and realistic the effects are. Indy Navarrete wore prosthetics and makeup that incites the uncanny valley effect so she could hide in the dark lighting and make audiences think they were seeing things that weren't there. Her face throughout this movie is the horror, and how she manipulates her body in conjunction with editing techniques makes for some of the creepiest scenes of the decade. Of course, there's plenty of visual effects in Obsession, especially with their use of the infamous volume to create backdrops and shoot the car scenes, but the lack of set diversity in the film also let them create some pretty great practical moments.
Make yourself at home.
Love you.
Love you.
And by far the best example of this key element is Markiplier's Iron Lung. He was able to use a huge chunk of his budget to recreate the submarine from the video game and throw all of the production efforts into making realistic screens, lighting, and of course, blood. You see, the submarine in question is actually in an ocean of blood, and Markiplier claims his movie now has the world record for the most amount of fake blood in any film ever made. It even hospitalized him from how much of it was contaminating his body. Stories like this sell tickets though. It's no secret that behind the scenes gimmicks and cool filmmaking techniques are extra ways to get people to talk about your movie. People couldn't stop mentioning Backrooms bringing a creepypasta legend to life, or Iron Lung almost killing its director. Trivia like this makes films thrive, and it's pretty obvious that YouTubers of all people would love to have stories to tell like this. So horror is the gateway that allows creative filmmaking to take center stage and give new directors the feeling of actually making something that isn't in front of a green screen. But it also gives them the opportunity to delve into something way more important: emotion. You can achieve emotion in practically any story, granted you're a good filmmaker. But there's something about horror that doesn't just draw YouTubers in, it draws any aspiring creator to it. Years before this explosion of YouTube directors, it was actually comedians who were finding their way into the genre. Zach Kreger famously used to be a part of The Whitest Kid You Know. Jordan Peele is of course the most famous example, creating some of the best horror of all time after being known as the Key and Peele guy. While Markiplier, Raka Raka, and Curry Barker had all come up on YouTube creating comedic videos. There's a link between horror and comedy that is undeniable, as both mediums require you to focus truly on inciting emotion. While comedy makes people laugh, horror needs to make them scared. No one wants to make a comedy film, everyone wants to make a horror film. Zach Kreger has even made a career out of funny horror.
Excuse me, oh my god.
Which can scare you and make you fall over laughing in the same 5 minutes. Obsession also has some pretty hilarious moments baked into it.
I wish my friend Barry.
I wish for $1 billion.
Or how Jordan Peele's Get Out straight up has the comedy relief sidekick as a real character.
Research, because as a TSA agent, you guys are detectives, I got the same training, we might know more than y'all sometimes, because we dealing with some terrorist shit.
There is something truly linked between comedy and horror. I mean, we've all accidentally laughed during serious moments in life. It's a coping mechanism for when you're scared. This draw is yet another reason why a ton of YouTubers and entertainers in general feel like they want to make horror films. And of course, this all ties to the single most important element, the YouTubers themselves. As you've probably guessed by now, the key reason why they all seem to be making horror is because they want to. Markiplier has talked extensively about how he's always wanted to grow from making short films on YouTube to a full theatrical release and just needed the idea to let him do it. He found that when playing Iron Lung, a horror game. It felt like a natural extension of Mark's whole career for his directorial debut to be about a horror game. It's what he's known for. Backrooms is directed by Kane Parsons, whose entire YouTube career was obviously based on the Backrooms, yet again a natural extension of the person leading the creative direction. Curry Barker has been a filmmaker on YouTube for a long time, and he has always blended comedy skits with horror short films. Think of it this way, there's not really a slop tuber out there already diving into being a director. We've seen people like Logan Paul try and make stuff on their channel, but it's usually AI garbage with no emotion, and studios wouldn't ever take gambles on stuff like this. I'm sure if Mr. Beast decided he wanted to direct a movie, a studio would let him just because he's so famous, but right now, we've only seen companies like A24 and Neon giving YouTubers a chance. And naturally, they've chosen the YouTubers with a vision, a history of quality, and the low budget needed to finance that dream. At the end of the day, sure, it's about money, to both the creators and the studios, but it's also because horror is just so damn fun to make.